I'm Dick Moberg, and for more than 40 years I've been developing technology to advance our understanding of the injured brain. I've had a chance to work with some of the leading minds in the field of neuromonitoring, including physicians, researchers, and entrepreneurs. I want to share their stories with you in the form of a weekly podcast so you can stay current on the latest developments in the field and the innovative people behind them. This is my neural network. Hi, I'm Dick Moberg, and our topic today is big data and the cloud in TBI. And we're going to have a view from the outside. And our outsiders are our two guests, Craig Maddux, who's healthcare analytics and technical specialist at IBM, and Mark Talens, who is a technical executive for data and AI in healthcare. So welcome, you guys.
Thanks, Dick. Glad to be here.
Yeah, happy to be here.
And we just had a great dinner in New York, and we're in a little bar here that's a little bit noisy, but I think we'll be able to do this fine here. And thanks, I enjoyed being with you this evening. So we're going to talk about your experience at IBM in working in data, in big data and cloud technology in areas that are not quite related to our area of brain injury, but in other sectors or in other areas of healthcare. And the idea is to try to figure out how do we, what do you see of what you're doing now? How could that be applied to traumatic brain injury? So that's what we're going to discuss. And some of our listeners probably are still a little confused on really what is big data and what is cloud computing. So does one of you want to define what is your definition of big data?
So this is Craig. People typically define big data along any number of dimensions that always starts with a V, and there's velocity for data that's going really fast, and variability for data that's in all different kinds of forms, and volume for data that's just so much data. So you add up these dimensions and you decide that I'm working on a big data problem. And it's interesting because we've been working on these problems in other areas for I would say decades. My first big data problem was right after 9/11. We implemented all these banking regulations, and all of a sudden we had to figure out, if somebody was doing money laundering, and that required doing incredible analysis on tons and tons of banking data. My interest in big data was piqued when I learned of a use case where people were analyzing signals, audio signals, to decide if a rabbit was crossing a demilitarized zone or it was a Jeep. And so we've been solving these problems in other areas for a long time, and I'm happy that we're now beginning to approach them in the healthcare industry as well.
That's good. And what about cloud computing? How would you define that, Mark?
So cloud computing basically is using somebody else's data center, really. So it's a data center that has been externalized for public consumption for both consumers and large companies, small companies, to access it without having to spend the resources to buy their own hardware and administer the networks and the disks and all the software. Now they're relying on somebody else to lay down the infrastructure, and they'll just use that environment, or they'll create an infrastructure for them.
You want to add to that?
So it's really about flexibility, because typical IT infrastructures, everyone knows, it took months and weeks and longer to get somebody to give you a computer to do something with. And so the attractiveness of these platforms is that, I can swipe my credit card in a half an hour. I can running a very powerful server on any number of cloud services with GPUs and all kinds of stuff. So that this flexibility of, I want to use it for this afternoon, and then I don't need it anymore, and I want it to only cost me $100 rather than it's $40,000 to install a server and get my IT department involved in that effort. That's the attractiveness of this. So it's putting this compute power in a very flexible, economic way into the people that need it when they need it, and when they don't need it, they can turn it off and stop paying for it.
Fair enough. That's a good definition. I like that. And from a person that has a small company here, the benefits are pretty significant because we don't have to build that infrastructure, but yet we can provide the value to customers of the cloud. So that's what it's all about. I mean, some people have told me, well, just dragging some files to Dropbox is using the cloud, and that is another definition of it. But yeah, right. Yeah.
It's somebody else's storage, and what you want is, I want to share this file, and it's 2 gig with my friend, and I don't want to have to put it on a USB stick and stick it in the mail. I want them to have it this afternoon, and so this is how you do it, and that's worth that few pennies that it costs to do that. It's less than the price of a postage stamp to mail the silly thing. So.
And it's going to be safeguarded also because they put forth the backup and recovery for it, so that it's redundant. So the things that we tell people, in a commercial market or a at-home market, they should back up their data. Most people don't. It's cumbersome to do that. So they can put it up to the cloud and know that their data is safeguarded not just once but multiple times, so that if it ever gets lost or crashed, they can easily restore it and their data is safe.
And I know it's encrypted, and I know that Mark is the only one I've given access to the data, so I have reassurance that my respect for Mark notwithstanding, that he's not going to take and run away with my data.
So I think that's great. Do you have so give me some examples of problems you've solved, working with IBM using big data in the cloud that we may not see from a medical point of view. I mean, what are the applications you're working on?
So one of the early ones that we worked on with IBM was around analyzing DNA and DNA markers. And so to break out a single DNA strand, it creates about a terabyte of data. And as you go deeper into the DNA strand, it creates multiple terabytes of data. So you're talking about, for one DNA strand, terabytes of data that are being created to do the analysis. And one of the first applications that I've seen that used within IBM was helping drug companies do clinical trials to find out people that have the right DNA markers are more apt to respond to the clinical trial. Because when somebody does a clinical trial, they really don't want to get just anybody, because that can kind of water down the results. So if they can fill a clinical trial with a high percentage of people with similar DNA markers that would be receptive to the drug, it helps prove that drug more than just random DNA markers. So it's helped out the drug manufacturers come up with that, and it helps the consumer in the end, because now they know certain people that they can actually target to. Some people would help resolve their illnesses with this drug, and others they know that it wouldn't resolve because they don't have the right DNA markers where this drug is effective.
I think that's a good example, and as we were talking earlier, it's the kind of thing you need in traumatic brain injury. We need to individualize the therapy. It's just that we don't have all that data right up front, but that's the kind of problem that we need to work on. Do you have any comments on that, Craig?
I'm just really happy that we seem to be reaching a point where this technology is getting into the hands of traumatic brain injury researchers and clinicians. And a huge plug for you and the Moberg is that they need a data set that's clean in order to do that, and that's what you provide them. So I'm just really excited about. I feel like we're nearing the knee of a curve, or we're getting close to being able to apply these really advanced techniques by really amazingly smart people, and putting the tools in their hands that they need to help solve them.
Yeah, thanks. I think one of the things that in other areas where IBM works, in the public sector and businesses, you don't have a lot of the data privacy issues that we have in healthcare. That's being debated a lot. I was talking about, I was just at a meeting where there are a lot of patient advocacy groups that are really trying to keep patient data protected. I have mixed feelings about that. I think there are pluses about it, and there are minuses in that data doesn't get into the hands of of systems that can use the data to extract value that could help us in terms of improving the quality of medicine and in terms of doing the kind of things that you were talking about, Mark, about dividing groups of patients into ones that a certain therapy can help and ones that it may not. So those are issues I think that we just have to work out as a community and see where we can make it work for both sides of the sort of political spectrum. So any comments?
Well, and I think that's one of the bigger unknowns within medicine too is the brain. So I think everybody feels pretty secure when they go into the hospital if they have problems with their lungs, with their heart, with any of their organs. But I think whenever they get into the brain, it's a bigger issue with a lot more unknowns. I just had an employee that we lost 2 years ago who was in a bike accident and had a traumatic brain injury. And I don't know what type of devices they had to do that, but they kind of almost wrote him off. I mean, he was in the ICU for 4 to 6 weeks, and they really couldn't do much with him. I don't know how much monitoring they did with him, but from talking with his wife, it was almost from day one that they didn't seem to be able to do much for him. So I don't know if they had the right instrumentation to monitor his conditions, whether they could do something with him, whether they had the right facilities wherever they took him into in San Jose. But it's just such a big mystery, I think, within the medical community and within the personal community also. When your loved one goes in with a traumatic brain injury, how do you resolve that? How do you monitor and see what's going on there? It just seems like it's such an unknown area.
No, I think that's correct. And do you have anything to add to that, Craig?
No, I liked your analogy earlier about the safety of airline flights, and if treating the fact that we ask you, gosh, what are the good hospitals if my loved one does get an injury. That should not.
Where's the good hospital?
My decision of where to retire shouldn't really hinge on where's the best neuro trauma center in that area. It should be like I shouldn't have to choose airplanes based on safety ratings. So yeah, we need to bring that discipline into neurology and TBI.
And I'd like to see the work that you're doing with TBI also blend into the stroke side as well too. So I've already had several of my relatives pass away from strokes, and once they have the stroke, they do the MRI and once they just see there's a lot of blood there, probably just chances aren't. It just seems so general still. They're they see this one pattern, nothing we can do, get your affairs in order, and that's it. So it just seems like there's so much more growth that we can do in that area to pinpoint and to see if we can help down the road. It just seems like once that happens, it's game over. So we'd like to see some advancement on the medical side with that type of measurement.
I think one of the things with TBI is it's a little different from genomic data. So genomic data is huge, and there's other areas which are, I would say, are truly big data. In TBI, the data has typically been just an hourly, measurement of intracranial pressure or an hourly subjective observation of pupil size. And this has been the history of traumatic brain injury. And a neurosurgeon told me a couple of months ago. He said, for traumatic brain injury, what we do is we stabilize what we can measure, and then Mother Nature does the rest. And that's why there's so much variability in this. Now, if you think about it, all we've been measuring is intracranial pressure, one measurement from the most complex dynamic organ in the body. And so I think if through monitoring and big data we can amplify what we can measure, I think we can stabilize more, and maybe Mother Nature does less. Right? And I think that's where we want to get in terms of the technology that you folks bring to this. and just leave less to chance and more that we can intervene. So that's.
And knowing more about me. I mean, personally, I have microhemorrhages in my brain. If I ever do go into an emergency room with a bleed, I want them to know that, and I want them to have done enough studies based on my makeup to they know that if a person has this condition and they come in with this type of a bleed, that this is actually the best course of action and not the other. So when you talk about what's the promise of big data, it's being able to empower researchers to say, yeah, let's look at an MRI history on a patient in addition to all this other data when they do come into the ICU, and make a decision based on that personal history. And like Mark says, I want to carry it around on a strip on my driver's license, and not be afraid that it's going to be used by my insurance company.
I have nothing to hide.
Right. Well, I think that's the goal. It's get data through all the sort of regulatory burdens. Let's figure that problem out. It's getting data to technology that we can use to extract the value, and then get it into the hands of the caretakers so that they can treat things better.
And I think one of the outcomes of the big data piece at the end, we'd like to apply artificial intelligence to this as well too. So, I think the more information that we have on brain imaging, that we can use artificial intelligence to do comparisons on the brain images, that we can come up with better diagnosis and pinpoint where the issues are. I mean, it's difficult for any one doctor to look at the thousands of different brain scans that would be out there to find out what are similarities, and these had a certain successful treatment. And I think that's the benefit of having all that data collected as big data, being able to analyze it using artificial intelligence, doing that type of comparison and correlation, I think would benefit as a tool to the medical profession, to the doctors, to the neurologists, to say, oh, I see the artificial intelligence system came up with this type of recommendation. I concur based off of this. I wouldn't have the time to look at 2,000 images, but I see the AI system did, and I agree with its assessments. We should go down this path, just as a tool, not to make a final diagnosis, but a tool for the doctors to use to help determine courses of action for TBI.
I think we have to redefine it to our definition of big data with regards to healthcare. Right now, it seems like it's this study done at these 6 universities with these 100 patients, and that's our definition. We have to figure out a way to where big data means I have a patient population of the however many hundreds of millions of people live in the U.S. And figure out a way that these studies all feed into some kind of a nationalized collaborative system, to where even though I'm in a small community hospital in the mountains of wherever, I have access to the patient data that is collected across the Ivy League universities as well.
I think that's an excellent idea, and there is a push among several people to create this sort of national database. There are issues involved, as you can imagine. It goes back to the data privacy laws, but I've always been dismayed at, you go into a critical care room, into an ICU room, you look at all the data going across the monitors, almost all of it is lost. And every bit of that data could go into a database that would make it so that the patient you're treating today, that data can help you treat the patient tomorrow. And that's where we need to get to. I think we need to get this data, we need it annotated, and we need to put it through the technology you guys have to try to learn from every patient that goes into a hospital. It's the only way we're going to do it. I mean, we as we said before, we collect data from every airplane that flies to make that system the safest system in the world. but we don't do that in the hospital. And
We do the same thing for cars. We have a national database for automotive for accidents and insurance, and yet we don't have something like that within health. So cars are more important to us than our own health and our own brains. It's
and I remember being at an IBM meeting, and when it was which Craig, I appreciate all the invitations, and I love those meetings. But I remember a plenary session in the morning talking about, it was like Susie Shopper or whatever it was, and it was all about IBM data in the retail industry, which you guys are very strong in, right? And having this woman go through a store, and it would know exactly what she was interested in, and all this about her. And then I think in our session we had on traumatic brain injury in the afternoon, I was saying, and now Susie Shopper goes outside the store, and she gets hit by a bus. She gets taken to a hospital, and we know nothing about her. But nothing about her.
Merlot from France from 72, but we have no idea how to treat a brain injury. It's
exactly. And that's the problem.
Shame, actually. It really is, yeah.
So I think we can change that. And, the other thing I wanted to talk about is for somebody of my generation, I sort of grew up with IBM. I mean, I started programming in the late 60s on an IBM 1130, I think it was, or 1170, writing Fortran code. And to me, IBM, that's means computers. I think the younger generation thinks about Google and Amazon because they grew up with everything. But I think people still think of Watson. Watson was really the very first, awakening that a machine could do something better than a human. And I think what you folks have done is created, a suite of tools and things around Watson. And maybe you want to talk about that, because we've been using those, Craig, and we've had a really nice collaboration at our company with using some of the Watson tools. And I think they're great. Maybe you want to talk about where you're planning to go with that, or how they can be used in healthcare. And
yeah, again, it kind of comes back to putting the tools in the people who can do something valuable with them. And so things like Watson Studio are kind of putting that whole entire open source tool set and some kind of add-on cool things that IBM has developed internally into the people that can do good with it. It seems like, I don't know, it's probably politically incorrect. IBM is really good at developing technology and getting it into the hands of kind of the Fortune 500s, and so we're on the cutting edge of quantum, and we're on the cutting edge of AI with Watson and Jeopardy, and there's a lot of other companies who maybe do a little bit better at marketing that technology, and we kind of still play to the big companies. I don't know where I'm going with this statement at all, but
well, the other part too, and that came out of the Great Jeopardy Challenge, was the natural language processing and natural language understanding that we caught out of Jeopardy, which, it's hard for people to fathom because it's English, it's understanding. It's like, well, getting a computer to understand English and the multiple idioms and synonyms of the things, what something actually means in context to a different topic, it's monumentally difficult for a computer to teach a computer how to do that. So for IBM to take that over and to teach a computer that only understands bits and bytes to understand the English language in the form of Jeopardy, where you've got these mega minds coming up with this, and to actually beat a Jeopardy champion, two Jeopardy champions, it's amazing. And now taking that same type of technology now and applying that into regular consumers' hands and trying to understand diagnosis, procedures, things that are going on. I think we've tried it in multiple industries, and it hasn't always panned out. I think the health industry is one that it has, because the information in the health industry is very well documented. And so it's easy for Watson to learn from the health industries, because there's a myriad of well-documented journals, medical journals. The definitions are very clear-cut. They don't have multiple meetings. So it's Watson AI has been very good within the medical community in that aspect of natural language processing, which I think was the biggest part out of the Jeopardy challenge.
Yeah, I think that's something that I've heard a lot about. We haven't really applied that to the TBI or brain injury area, which I think would be really exciting to do. Yeah,
I'd love to do a pilot project where we take, for a whole year, take all of the articles that published on Lancet in the subject area and feed them into Watson natural language discovery and see what it comes up with.
I mean, for a neurologist, they have their specialty. They don't really want to type anything into the computer. They want to be able to talk to the computer. So for Watson to be able to understand what a neurologist is saying and the medical terms, I can't even follow or understand what the doctors are talking, what a neurologist is talking about. But we could train Watson to understand what a neurologist is saying, find out what they're, and then actually kick off procedures to go off and look for information, look for images for certain brain scans based off of what the doctors asked for, because Watson understands what the neurologist is asking for. I think it's very powerful.
We tried it in cancer, and I think we were a little bit over our skis a bit with that, but it's
a lot of it goes into the training as well.
I think that the technology, the theorem or the theory that we're trying to test out is sound, and I think I'd love to take another shot at that.
Well, let's do it. I mean, we
on the cloud.
Yeah, right. Well, we have the Department of Defense has been very good about funding these activities, and we just got a nice grant from them to try to develop a more meaningful medical record for the brain, and I know that analytics is going to play a big role in this. I know that getting data onto the cloud for retrospective analysis and all that's going to play a big role in this, and so. We're really looking forward to working with you guys and continuing the collaboration. It's been not only intellectually stimulating, but it's been fun.
A lot of fun.
And the fact that we're in a bar here in New York after a fun dinner and everything, I think is a testament to that. And it's hard to find a quiet bar in New York City, but we tried our best. But I hope the audio comes out on this. But well, anyway, I'd like to thank both of you for any closing comments. Or are you?
Just thanks, and I am excited about the future and all of the possibilities that bringing this big data discipline to these really super hard problems by some really smart people. I think I look forward to more progress.
And I think this is one of the areas that I think gives our job more meaning as well too. So I mean. Yes, we've been doing this for 30 years, working with insurance, working with banks, but to see something that actually can go to help actual people who have traumatic brain injuries, or, this can be used for cardio problems as well too. It's much more fulfilling for us to see this being applied to me, something more meaningful, something that drives home, because it's about people, helping people.
It's all well and good to help a bank make more money and to help somebody sell more shoes, but making a difference in people's lives directly is what has ignited my passion. That's why I was indoctrinated into the Church of Moberg a number of years ago, and it's been a great passion. So it's rare, I guess, if in your life you get an opportunity to work on a problem like this, it's a good thing.
Well, thank you, Craig. We haven't been called a church, a lot of other things, but I'll take it. That's good.
I didn't want to call it a cult. It's not really a cult. It's not a gang. It's a club.
Yeah, right. Well, anyway, but really, thank you guys for spending some of your evening here talking about this. It's been wonderful, and have a safe trip back tomorrow. And thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
See you,
and we'll just
see you in Canada.
Yep, exactly. All right, good enough. Thanks a lot. So thanks for listening to this week's podcast. If you enjoy these interviews, please take a moment to rate and review this show on your podcast app of choice. Subscribe to Dick Moberg's Neural Network to receive notifications when future installments are available. Thanks for tuning in, and we hope you'll join us again soon.